He was a shepherd king. Around 1,000 years before Christ, in the hills of ancient Israel, a man named David writes a short poem that becomes a lifeline for millions. Listen now, as the words breathe trust into a frightened heart. David is a shepherd who becomes king. He knows the quiet of fields and the terror of battle. As a poet, he names what he has seen, a guiding presence that leads, feeds, protects, and restores. He speaks from lived experience, not abstract theory. In the hush after sunset, David opens the psalm with a simple confession: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." He is saying that life is not about accumulating things. He speaks of relationship, a shepherd who knows each sheep and supplies every need. As the psalm continues, David pictures green pastures and still waters. In his culture, pasture means safety and provision. Water means life itself. He is not promising a life without hunger. He is promising God will guide him to what sustains his body and soul. When he says, "God restores my soul," David remembers moments when fear and guilt drain a man dry. Restoration is a healing of identity. In Israelite thought, the shepherd reorders the scattered life, bringing courage and rightness back to a broken heart. In that very moment, he adds that the Lord leads me in paths of righteousness. David means moral direction, not just travel. A shepherd sets the path, so the flock does not stray into danger. God, like a shepherd, guides choices that honor life and community. As the light fades, David does not deny valleys of deep darkness. He names them, the valley of the shadow of death. But in that very darkness, he refuses to be alone. The shepherd's rod and staff are symbols of protection and guidance, tangible signs that God accompanies him even through mortality's darkest hours. When fear presses, David refuses to let fear define him. He feels safety because the shepherd's rod corrects and the staff comforts. In Israel, a rod is for protection. A staff guides the weak. Together they tell us that God both defends and tends the vulnerable. As the psalm moves forward, David pictures a table set in the presence of his enemies. This image means vindication, not vengeance. To have a meal in enemy sight is to be publicly honored and protected. The pouring of oil on his head in that culture signals hospitality and being chosen. In that same scene, he declares, "My cup overflows." David uses the cup as a symbol of abundant blessing. Overflowing does not mean wealth alone. It means life so full of grace that gratitude cannot be contained, even when trials remain at the horizon. As the psalm closes, David proclaims that goodness and mercy follow him all his days. In Hebrew thinking, goodness and mercy are God's loyal presence accompanying life. He pictures a lifetime under God's gracious attention, not a single moment of favor, but a pattern that shapes every day. And then he says, "I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." David uses temple language to express belonging. To dwell in God's house means to live under divine care and hospitality, to belong to God's family. He sees his future not as isolated survival, but as lasting communion. When we remember David the king, we must recall David the shepherd. The psalm bridges both. He writes as one who has known both vulnerability and throne. That is why images of pasture and house can live side by side, because God's care shaped his whole life from lowest to highest places. As conflicts rage in his lifetime, David's words are not naive optimism. He writes trust forged in hardship. When enemies surround him, his language becomes defiant gratitude. He knows protection is not absence of struggle, but a faithful presence that changes the meaning of struggle. In that same breath, David moves from description to prayerful assurance. He names God's actions and claims them for his life. This is not magical thinking. It is faith tested by experience, an assertion that God's pattern of care is trustworthy for every future step. Because culture matters, David's image of oil on the head needs context. In his world, anointing means consecration and honor, often given to guests and leaders. To be anointed means to be chosen and sustained. David uses this image to show he is sheltered in God's favor. As days and years pass, David frames his life within this trust. The psalm is not a guarantee against every hardship. It is a lens that reinterprets hardship as held inside God's care. That shift matters. It changes fear into steady hope and isolation into belonging. In that same echo, David's words travel beyond his life. People in every age read this psalm and find permission to trust. That is the psalm's enduring power. It moves personal memory into communal promise, offering a template for how communities can live under God's care. In the end, David teaches us that trust is not escape from trouble, but the conviction that God guides, provides, protects, and makes a home for us. Psalm 23 invites us to live with that steady hope. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you do not miss the next one.